Welcome to the Belly to Belly podcast, where we explore in person business to business marketing. This episode is brought to you by Meet, the company that helps international companies exhibit at US trade shows. Check them out at meetroi.com.
Welcome, everybody. And this is Belly to Belly, our podcast for Meet. And we're a company that helps international companies exhibit at US trade shows. And the whole goal of this podcast is to really help you get the most out of your marketing and leverage really all the resources you have. And we're so delighted today to have Laura.hannan with us from Pitch One to One. Laura, welcome.
Thank you. Very nice to be here. Lovely to see you, Bill.
Oh, it's wonderful to see you. So, when we got started talking, it sounded like you have had a bit of a role change, and now you're the director of client success, and you're a co-founder in the company. So, what does a director of client success do? What's your job?
Right. Well, as you know, when you're a business owner, you're doing everything, right? But I am lucky to have a co-founder, Fergus Parker. So I lead on, well, it says it on the tin, it's the director of client success. So I do have an account manager who is managing sort of day-to-day tasks with clients, and I get to have the wonderful job of overseeing the strategy and just making sure that they get ROI. You know, it's as simple as that. So all that we're aiming for is for our clients to be happy and delighted and never cancel. And so obviously the job gets bigger and bigger over time because we're now in our beginning of our third year of business. And you know, the great thing about having this overview across lots of clients is that ideas come from everywhere. So you can really sort of, the platform changes, LinkedIn changes, the way that people are using and consuming content changes, and I get to do the innovative, fun stuff, you know, seeing what other people are doing, testing things, seeing what's working, and moving our product on.
So cool. It sounds like you think a lot like we think, and that is, you know, when we think about serving our clients, for us it's really what our job is to assure that our relationship matures and is successful enough for the client to where they're a wonderful advocate for our services.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so that, you know, with that as our sort of true north, it becomes very easy to make decisions about what your service should be. It's very obviously very aligned with the right outcomes for your client, which it seems
And
like.
I bet your network is full of future advocates and current advocates.
Hopefully, and we'll get into that for sure, and certainly talking about your methodologies. But before we do, and just so everybody knows, that, you know, the real goal of this podcast is to help give you very useful information, and obviously to do that, we want to have context in terms of the information we're sharing. So you and Fergus formed Pitch One to One. How many years ago?
Just over 2 years ago. Yeah,
cool.
So we're in our third year.
Excellent. And so, what was the original impetus? What was it that caused you to do it?
Okay, so I've been in sales for years and years, a sales practitioner. Fergus and I used to work on the same sales team. I'm looking at the date now to find out how many years ago it was, 14 years ago. And
you were just a teenager then.
Yeah. I was just a young thing. What happened? We were in a content marketing agency, and I think that what you see in Pitch One to One is the mix of Fergus and I as salespeople, but selling an inbound marketing product. You know, we were selling content before content marketing was a phrase, and you will see those influencers coming into Pitch One to One. I think the thing that we discovered when we were working there, Fergus, by the way, ended up working there for over a decade and becoming CEO of the company. the thing that was really overwhelming to us, and because I went and worked for digital agencies after that, is and then a tech startup after that, is the time I worked at this content marketing agency was when I was the most effective at selling in terms of every quarter hitting my results. Why? Because we had telemarketers that would set up the meetings. Then I'm not concentrating on lead gen as well as closing, as well as delivering a client. And there is this, there's a book called Predictable Revenue, which I'm sure some of your listeners will know. And it's absolutely convincing that you shouldn't have your expensive salespeople, because salespeople are expensive, doing 360 sales. Obviously, telemarketing used to be effective and became less and less effective, and you need to adapt to how you're doing lead gen. But actually, the principle remains the same. That if you have your salespeople focused on just that part of the funnel, you're going to help them to avoid that roller coaster of great quarter. You're so focused on closing that you haven't done any lead gen, so the next quarter is awful. Right. And so that's basically what Pitch 1-to-1 is based on, is working with in-house teams to make sure they've got a predictable funnel, that they've got new opportunities coming in.
And so your real focus is to develop the top of the funnel, is to continue to sort of drive new quality prospects into the top of the funnel.
Exactly. And we do have a funnel and we report on a funnel, but we think of it more like a network, because at any one time, 3% of your audience might be ready to buy. So what you can do is you can contact everybody and find those, just go, do you want to buy? Do you want to buy? Do you want to buy to everybody? And you'll find the 3% that want to buy. So that's a volume play, and it's okay if you don't mind slightly annoying 97% of your audience.
Right.
Which is okay if you've got more people you can throw in, but a lot of companies, they've just got a target list of dream clients. They don't want to just like throw it out and see what sticks, because actually what sticks could be somebody who's not such a great fit for you. Sure. So actually it's about taking much more care over a slightly smaller pool of people. And instead of going sell, you go, hey, can I help you out? What's going on with you at the moment? By the way, this is what we do. So I do believe in outbound, but I also believe in relationship buying, and not be outbound to the extent that, people might say, oh, it's not the right time for me. And you go, great, because you know that you've got a relationship enough. You can go back in 6 months' time, but just until then, stay front of mind. So you're on that short list when briefs are created.
That makes total sense. So, what then is thinking of Pitch 1-to-1? What's the array of services that you all provide?
So we're looking mainly at 2 platforms, LinkedIn and email. Then we look at growing the network. So we will do lots of sort of soft touch points around LinkedIn, and then do a connection request. And we really want that to be as personalized as possible. There's a lot of unsolicited template looking connection requests coming out. So a lot of what we do is message creation, really bespoke messaging, and testing what works the whole time. And then once we've built the relationship on LinkedIn, we then we use our technology to be able to keep track on everybody. Are they considering booking with you? Have they said no for now? And then we know that if we send them an email, we're sending the right people the email, that they've got the relationship up to that level where you can say, hey, this is what I do. If I can help you at all, just let me know.
It seems like there must be a fair amount of strategic work that has to happen before you even sort of begin the effort on LinkedIn or on email, in terms of targeting the right people and or the right organizations and so on. Is that a fairly rigorous process to sort of build the target matrix?
Yeah, so It is about the targeting, but it's also about the messaging that goes
Sure.
out to those people. So we have a process where we go through the service, the audience, like how you're perceived,
Mm.
like we had one today, a new client on board. We spent 2 hours on a content briefing, so we get a
Mm.
really deep. There's a get a really really. Is the sound okay here?
Oh yeah, you sound
Yeah,
fine.
sorry. Yeah, so you get a really, really deep understanding of how they're positioning themselves in the market
Hmm.
against their competitors, and then understanding the complex target audience structure. So we would go out to. We definitely need to make sure we get the right accounts,
Mm.
but then within those accounts, we've got different job roles, different stakeholders
No
that
question.
would be important. Some of them they would want to meet, some of them are influencers,
Mm.
and then perhaps there's a partner network as well as the direct approach. So we need to make sure that we're bringing all of that together. Now, Sales Navigator on LinkedIn is pretty good,
Mm.
but it doesn't quite do enough, so
Mm.
we've actually built a platform, so we've got every single person that is in our network,
Mm.
to make sure that we know they've got a tag on them, so we know what kind of partner they are,
Mm.
or we obviously you've got the information in LinkedIn about industry, size, company, but there might be something really specific like the source.
Yeah.
They came up a webinar, for
Right.
example, so you can then put that into the messaging. But the most important thing is that you've got content and a reason to be in touch. So usually our strategy goes over the next few months. What events are you going to be at? How are we going to take this online relationship
Mm.
into an offline conversation? Because that's how sales happen. And
Sure.
then maybe bring it back onto online.
Hmm.
So, we're actually helping clients with their content strategy.
Mm.
Not to the extent that a content agency would, but
Mm.
just to say, okay, what have you got going on? Right, we can use that on LinkedIn, we can use that on email, we can
Sure.
promote that.
Yeah, those are all digital assets that can be leveraged, yeah,
Yeah.
probably in multiple ways. So, yeah, no, that totally makes sense, and the idea of both developing very accurate targets, and I would imagine those evolve as your testing sort of happens, and
Yeah.
then just as the messaging, I would imagine, evolves. So, maybe one last question, then let's really dive into our topic. So, the last question I have with regard to pitch one-to-one is, who's sort of the best prospect or the best type of company for you to work with? What's the sort of sweet spot for you?
Yeah, it's an organization that has a very value-led proposition.
Hmm.
So if it's more of a sort of commodity that you're selling,
Mm.
it's less interesting. I mean, we can do it, but
Mm.
I think that when you need to show your expertise, you need to educate. You know, we need those kind of topics to talk about, and actually, they're the hardest kind of sales to do.
Hmm.
Where you're taking people through a journey of discovery
Mm.
before you meet somebody. So usually, it falls into three different brackets for us, and that is consultancies,
Mm.
tech companies.
Mm.
If somebody's doing something innovative, you've got, it creates a lot of interest on
Mm.
LinkedIn. And the other one is agencies.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So very much strategic and conceptual type sales
Mm,
that, yeah,
mm.
are it's, less tangible
Yeah,
in
yeah.
terms of, yeah,
And
yeah.
and I think the other thing that is the same with all of our clients is they know that what they're selling is not easy.
Mm. Mm.
Like basically, the tough sell will be the
Mm.
will be the partner that will take that on.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, let's hop into our topic, and this is something that LinkedIn obviously has been around for many years now, and it's
Mm,
such a powerful platform, and it's used for so many different things, from recruiting to making connections to certainly for prospecting, and there are so many sort of different values that are there, and you guys are really leveraging the tool very well. Thinking about market entry companies that are possibly going from the UK where you're based here to the
mm-hmm.
US, or going from the UK into other parts of Europe or Asia, or crossing any border. why is LinkedIn a particularly good tool for market entry? What values can we derive from it that are particularly supporting
Yeah,
international
yeah,
market
yeah.
entry?
The You can see the size of your market in another country.
Hmm.
Not all countries use LinkedIn to the extent that UK and US. I mean, US has the highest penetration, so anybody coming to the US, like, absolute, it's where you need to be. But pretty much, it's got, is it more than half? Is it 500 million users or something crazy,
Right.
And but when you're doing a LinkedIn search, you can actually just look up the job titles, the geography, the industries, and really get a sense for who you could contact on LinkedIn. It'll be relevant for you. As I mentioned, going into the US, absolutely, it makes sense. But our experience of talking to people in the US, and this is probably indicative from how friendly you are, Bill. We met in Lisbon, didn't we? And yeah, you just got randomly chatting to us, is because people in the States are just really friendly and open and keen to network.
Sure.
So we found that with our service. It's not that people in the UK are not chatty and don't respond. We've got lots of people selling into the UK that are doing very well with our service, but we really like it when we have clients selling into the US, because people are so open there.
Very cool. Well, so really, and it sounds like you could also use it for pre-entry, beginning to create some warm relationships, so that maybe you could even do some market testing and so on. Have you found that that's the case?
Yeah, definitely. So we worked with one fintech, and they were opening up a new office in Singapore, but we got in there first with some connection messages to say, hey, we're opening up in Singapore, let's connect. Through the roof connection rate,
Fantastic.
more than half of people were connecting. And we actually find that we've done the same with the Nordics as well, is when your connection message says, hey, we're coming to your region, people are really welcoming.
Right.
Actually, people are really nice, going, yeah, that of course you can join my network, let me give you a hand up in my, from my local town. Yeah, it works. Probably our best connection type of message is, hey, I'm coming to your area, let's connect.
Isn't that interesting? It's a very intelligent way to go at it. So when you're doing this, I would imagine you've been testing different messages, and you probably developed quite a matrix in terms of different personas and different types of messages, and sort of almost think, I quite often when I think about this, I think of it a bit like fishing, right? The decisions somebody that fishes makes, they're first deciding what do they want to catch, which obviously is sort of who's the prospect. But then they figure out where they're going to go fishing. And then, of course, what bait they're going to put in the water. And, if you sort of figure out those three things, it all seems to line up pretty well. And I would imagine LinkedIn creates a really good place to do some, not just the connecting, but really testing and coming up with a system, sort of in a process a lot. It's so that as a company, particularly thinking about market entry, it's one thing, sort of, to go, expand from the UK or whatever country to another, but then to be able to do it to 50 more countries is a whole nother endeavor, right? So, and you want each one to work better and more efficient and all that. So I would imagine that's maybe a neat opportunity as well, is to really systematize.
Yeah, it is. And you can make so much difference. You can basically have your network, you can have your potential customers in, like, it's like they're in the room with you, like you're talking to them regularly, and you're not actually in their country yet. It's you're acting like you are, but you haven't gone to that expense of opening up a new office. You're just talking about the fact, hey, I'm here, I'm coming. We have one client who is based in Iceland and wanted to grow the business in Denmark. a couple of hours away, but different time zone, 2 hours difference in time zone, so
Sure.
and now we've been able to grow the network. So what she was doing was going to meetings, and it would be like once a month, heading over there, going to meetings, and we would be setting her up with those meetings each time. And now she's actually moved there, and her kids have started school in Denmark. And so yeah, actually being part of that journey is quite exciting for us at Pitch One to One.
Yeah.
But it's meant that she's been able to open up that office with far less risk.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
She's already established.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah. And well, and certainly it's always good when your customer acquisition sort of funds your market entry.
Yes.
It gives you a lot more flexibility for sure.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic. So let's switch gears a little bit. Let's hop into talking about both sort of the individual profiles and the company pages. And I would imagine there's quite a bit of sort of testing and science that have sort of gone into developing that. And as I look at people's profiles or company pages, they're really there's quite an array of I guess the way people and companies are representing themselves, and some may not have been touched for years. Maybe it was originally put up and they haven't touched it, and then there are others that are very regularly posting content and updating and so on. So as you're looking to work with a company, so you have ultimately they're going to need a company profile if they don't have one, and they're going to need, the key people will need individual profiles. Where do you begin? How do you begin that process?
You definitely begin with the personal profile. So it's a lot easier to connect up with a personal profile than it is to get people following your company page. So we always work with the approach, build the personal relationships, and then at a point in time, ask them to follow your company page. So people will naturally find your company page through you being more active, which from a sort of branding and marketing perspective can feel a little bit like the wrong way around. You think that perhaps the brand should come first, but on LinkedIn, it definitely has to be personal profile. Then when you're posting, basically wherever your face turns up on LinkedIn, which is often in somebody's inbox going, hey, let's connect, they're going to see three things. They're going to see your profile photo, which needs to be nice and smiley and friendly looking and not private. If you've got a blank, if the default is blank, then it really affects things. You also need to have a headline that just positions you, right? So the default on LinkedIn is to copy your job title, which is usually a disaster. Obviously, if you've got an amazing job title, keep it. But, award-winning CEO of the best company in Europe now coming to the States would be quite a good one. We normally think of headlines in different ways. One, if you've got a really great profile, like a little bit of bragging, or how you help the target audience, or perhaps your sort of company, therefore personal mission. So that, think of those sorts of things for your headline. And then the thing that we test the most is the connection message. So not forgetting your connection message cuts off. So you have to click read more, and you just we always send two versions. Even though your instincts or your previous experience is telling you this one will work better, sometimes your instincts are wrong. And so it's always worth testing, even if it's just like a tiny word change once you're getting really optimized. But you can only do that if you're actually monitoring who got which message and who connected on that. So it's a really important thing to do if you're going to be doing this at scale, because otherwise you could just be bouncing the wrong messages off people.
Right. So you're tracking every message that goes out in terms of who it went to and what message do they get, and then the results of that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah.
We're always looking at delivery action, something we've done, fan activity, something they've done,
Yep.
and measuring those against each other. But then
Mm,
on the profile, somebody's a bit more interested.
yeah.
They're going to have a look at your full profile. So then
Sure.
you've got your background photo, which is
Mm,
often blue.
mm,
So if you're showing that you are an expert speaker, then have you speaking. If you're showing that you are a brilliant workshop taker, then
mm.
have yourself in a room so that people can imagine you doing what you do best, and in your role. Obviously mine is now going to change to us on this podcast.
You're taking a screen
uh,
grab.
um, and then your about section is a really we always rewrite the about section.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's written in third person, which is like a
Hmm.
proper CV no. Like, so think about your profile, telling your target market, your target audience, your fan,
Hmm.
how you can help them, why you are uniquely positioned to help them above anybody else with their particular problem. Show empathy, say your story, show what experiences you've had that have got you to where you are, and your belief that you can talk about awards and things like that, but it's more about a story. And also remember that half the people are going to read this on their mobile phone.
Mhm.
Short sentences, get rid of the big paragraphs of text. And then I've got no proof about how important recommendations are, but
Mm.
I think that if somebody's getting a little bit further down the pipe and they're thinking that they might want to work with you, having like somebody who's in the last 2 months a client of yours saying how much you've been able to help them, it must go a long way. It's quite sort of anecdotal, my experience on that, but I think that's an area that is really under used at the moment.
That's interesting. Yeah, it certainly makes sense, and I would imagine it's a bit like the online restaurant or service provider reviews, in that most of us that look at those reviews are certainly looking at the number of stars,
Yeah.
but we're also looking at the number of reviewers, right? And so, is this enough so that it's reliable in terms of the review of this person?
And recent,
Yeah.
somebody who was your boss 5 years ago saying that you were great to work with is not
Right.
going to be that helpful to your customers.
Mm.
But talking about the company page, I think company pages is like one to watch for LinkedIn, and it's about putting the groundwork in now, because they are bringing in features all the time on the company pages. They seem to be really focusing their efforts on that more than groups. We do use groups, and it's a conversation trigger for us. Join our group, thanks for joining, I noticed you did this, start a conversation. But the company page, getting a follower is really quite difficult. So if you're an admin on your company page and you see that little line, that box that says invite your connections, invite your connections, because that turns up and then it disappears. So make the most of that while you can. Whether it disappears because you make the most of it or not, I'm not too sure, but I didn't want to take the risk of not making the most.
Right.
Because they're bringing in over the next few months the ability to do LinkedIn Live on your company page. So this is an application process that you go through now, so you can do live video on your company page.
Yep.
Then everybody who's following your company page will get a notification to say this is on. So that's pretty effective, because not very many people are doing it. It'll really make you stand out. And the other thing is, like a Facebook company page, they're bringing in chat.
Yeah.
And so it's really worth getting those followers. And how you get the followers is ask them. Do the tick box when that turns up, and also share your company page posts with your personal network. Then people get to see that company page and they start following. You should be, it's a hard slog.
Yeah.
But the way things are going, just if you just keep doing it every week, getting more and more followers, you'll benefit from it in the long run.
Right.
I believe.
So, right. Yeah. Well, it's all a hypothesis, right? So, obviously building the personal profile, really important. What is the what are some of the best practices when it comes to the company page in terms of what should be included on there? What are sort of some key elements?
Yeah, so you can post on the company page as often as you
Mm.
like. We have found you get quite a lot of engagement when you talk about individual team members.
Mm.
Somebody's new joined the team, this is what they do. You've got to make it interesting,
Mm.
talk about what they do in their private life and add some images. Posts that have 3, 4 images
Mm.
on it on company pages do really well. In
Mm.
general, videos doing really well on LinkedIn. So we think that the company page should be quite a mix of team, what your company's doing, like an update, got new
Mm.
features, new clients and things like that, but also put some industry stuff in there as well.
Mm.
There is a tab on your company page. Get as many people to be administrators as possible that then they can help to develop your company page. But
Mm.
there is a tab that says content suggestions, and you can then select your audience and find articles that are getting the most engagement. And usually it's quite
Ah.
hard news,
Mm.
your topical stuff. I found that it's not quite niche enough for us, but I think some of your audience could find that really useful. And
Yeah.
it's just a really quick way to find articles that you can share on your page.
Yeah.
One click and a comment, and you're done.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. And so thinking about companies that are sort of getting sort of are more committed to sort of leveraging LinkedIn, yeah, get all the team members to have a solid profile, certainly setting up the company page, and then we want to make sure that they're recognized as employees on the company
Oh,
page,
definitely.
right? And so
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
really, really, I would guess, important as well.
It is, and when you post, yeah, thanks for that,
Mm.
because there's a really cool new feature on company pages,
Mm-hmm.
which is when you post as the administrator, you can then notify all of your employees that there is a new company page post, which
Yep.
not only is good for employee engagement, but then that
Right.
encourages them to like, comment, or share that to their
Yeah.
personal network. I know that there are sort of actual tech companies around that will do that kind of, going out to all employees. So I think it's really great they're doing that from inside the platform now.
Right. Right. No, it totally makes sense. And so you mentioned groups. At what point do you decide to set up a group for the company or a topic that the company might be, or a constituency that the company is trying to serve?
Yeah, it's more like creating a personal group,
Mm.
which is on a topic that would be interesting to your target audience, and you to
Mm.
be personally seen as a facilitator of discussion and
Mm.
networker, and for it not to be like your company branded group.
Right.
Because that's much less attractive for
Mm.
people to get involved with, and you kind of it's for your personal brand.
Mm.
If people see that you have a commercial interest but also a networking interest, they're much more likely to want to speak to you
Mm.
and get involved. So I would say that groups largely is quite tactical, just to help people
Mm.
feel more comfortable about sharing stuff with you, and eventually they become a marketing asset when people start naturally finding your group.
Mm.
And certainly, our groups that are 2 years old, we're getting to that point now, but it's been a lot of hard work, and I would say that LinkedIn isn't helping us with groups at the moment.
Mm.
We're I would suggest that you have to be prepared to put the work in, and for it to be really relevant to your business
Mm.
in order to start a group. You might be better off spending more of your effort on your company page, the way things are at the moment.
Got it. Got it. So leverage those key resources. And
Yeah.
I would imagine, though, participating in strong groups that other people
Ah,
have built
yes.
is probably an interesting tactic.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, I mean, the groups where lots of different people are posting are the ones
Yeah.
that are more interesting and people are getting
Mm.
more engaged with. So of course, I think it comes down to the kind of content. So people
Mm.
hate you promoting your
Yeah.
company in groups, obviously, but you can completely promote your company in an implied way through a really good quality piece of content. And
Hmm.
so as long as it does really go back to your marketing department or the the content that you're generating, is it relevant to that target audience? Are they going to get value from it? And then share away. So you can join up to 50 groups.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's a lot of sharing, and all you need is for the group owner to recommend it, then it's going to come up in your notifications. As one key thing is to try to come up in notifications.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of people are looking at what's happening because that's where they're getting updates from their network.
Right.
And a key thing we're doing to get into notifications is getting trending on
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn. So as soon as you're trending, you turn up on the notifications. So it would be Bill's been trending for hashtag networking. You know, it's got
Mm-hmm.
millions of followers, and it sort of associates Bill with networking, and so great for thought leadership. But also it doubles the amount of views on your post when you get
Right.
trending. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
what to try and do.
Very, very cool. So let's maybe go on to talk about the term future advocates. You'd used this early in our conversation. So let's first start by defining what is a future advocate. What's that role or persona?
So a future advocate knows you and has over time built up enough trust that they would talk to others about you in a favorable way. An advocate. So an advocate could be a customer, and because you've done the targeting so well in the beginning that they will be a great fit for your services, you're going to do a good job, they're going to get great results, and therefore they're going to advocate you to others. But actually in this network are people that haven't worked with you yet, or you know, potentially will never work for you, but they are talking about you, you know, and we do find that, you know, it takes time, but you start getting referrals from people who've just kind of seen you around a bit. And, you know, that's where, you know, the people that we're gathering, we call them future advocates because we can't say that everybody's your advocate yet. You know,
Sure.
it takes time. Some people will trust you immediately and some people could take years.
Sure.
Yeah, so the future advocacy network is what we're building, but they've got to be a good fit in the first place. I think the biggest mistake that people make when it comes to their sales and their client retention is just working with the people that happen to need to buy something similar to your service at that time. And then because you haven't got enough in your pipeline, you don't say no to the business because you need
Right.
money. And then, you know, you do an awful job, your team get demotivated, you might get a bad review, you know, or something terrible, and it's a downward spiral that you end up on. And it all comes down to, has your account management team on client retention fed back to your sales prospecting team what makes a perfect client? And you know, it's got to be joined up, and if you just sort of throw it out and see what sticks, you're just bringing problems
Right.
all the way through your business.
Yeah, we tend to see a lot of our clients and just prospects even have a condition we think of as prospect creep. In other words, their definition of a prospect, because of some sense of scarcity or something, tends to really creep fairly quickly over time. And we've kind of gotten very disciplined about saying, no, a prospect has only three qualities. They have a need, they have money, and they're urgent. And if they don't have all three, then they're not right for us.
Yeah, but that's where that is the difference between a prospect and a fan.
Yeah, totally.
If you come out of the mindset of thinking that everybody you speak to needs to have an urgent need right now so you can sell to them, you just step back a bit and you're able
Right.
to, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, so I
nurture.
would, by your definition, advocates, yeah, not only are potentially past customers or current customers, but they're also maybe associates or
Yes.
people, service providers that are complementary to what you do, and
Yeah.
all that kind of
Or even competitors.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
That,
you
yeah.
know, the market is usually big enough for a few of
Right.
you, and
Right.
actually, you'll all have your strengths. And if you can advocate a competitor, I think that shows that you're really comfortable with what you're doing. You know, you're not scared of competitors. I actually think that you can learn so much from competitors if you up, it just brings the whole industry up.
Yeah. So let's talk about future advocates and sort of how do you go through the process? I would imagine there's first sort of an identification and then a nurturing. So what are the sort of steps in there to develop that pool of future advocates?
Yeah, so be accurate about the accounts that you're going after, and be less accurate about those that work in those accounts. So as long as you've got the right companies, you're all right. So we usually start with either a target list of companies, or we do an account-based search on Sales Navigator, and then we find the people that work only for those companies, and we consider them into influencers and decision makers. But of course, over time, those influencers can become the decision makers, and referrals are a really, really powerful way to open up a new sales opportunity, because when you've been referred into somebody, it's weirdly more powerful than having gone in directly sometimes, because they see that, if a colleague's saying you should check this out, then they will do that for the sake of their colleague, at least. So we always go quite wide with the stakeholders, but tight on the companies. My advice would be, in order to do that, you want to get onto Sales Navigator. It's a bit pricey, it's about, I was going to convert it to dollars, but I would mess up over, £70 a month or something. And I would also recommend that you do Boolean searches. So that's where you're putting keyword and or not, rather than waiting for the drop downs that happen automatically from LinkedIn. It's a really small change, and it's amazing how few people do these Boolean searches, because if you do a pool where you just take those set job titles, you'll end up with a much smaller pool than if you do the Boolean, because people have got sort of such different job titles, like director of digital strategy and design or something like that, and so keywords, and making sure you get that seniority into the job title rather than the seniority as a selection box on that. So you can use Boolean searches in the companies. That is unreliable. Learn from my mistake. There are so many companies that are called the same name, so don't do that. And you can also do put Boolean into the keywords. The keyword search, if used on its own, it's really inaccurate, because it's finding those keywords anywhere on the profile. So it could be like a previous job or something like that. But if it's in combination with the right account and the job title, then actually it can give you ideas about the sort of experience or their focus. So if you want to really narrow it down, you can use Boolean in the keywords. One way that we also narrow down, two more ways, are the most active on LinkedIn. If you've got like 10,000 people you could contact, then you may as well go for the 2,000 that are the most active to start with. People become more active depending on how their month is. And then the other thing is, people tend, it does vary with this. We keep testing it and it's not conclusive, but more times than not, second connections are more likely to connect than third connections. So you can also do that filter as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. The closer they are relationally to you, the easier they are.
Yeah.
So let's maybe shift gears, and this has been such great information. And I think, the one thing we see a lot of today is probably people not putting the right message out, and maybe having poor etiquette on LinkedIn. People behaving badly, I would say.
There's a bit of that going on.
And so it'd be great to talk a little bit about sort of the sort of things that you see that probably challenge successful relationship building on LinkedIn, and then we can talk about sort of what you see as the best practices. But let's talk about what do you see as sort of the big challenges for people who are endeavoring to create good relationships on LinkedIn?
Yeah, it's standing out. There's so much noise happening on the platform compared to before. You just have to show, like, but you can stand out. It just takes time and effort.
Mm.
So you need to show that you've like looked at their profile. You've got to show interest in them. You've got to find a way you can help them, and then there is value in connecting.
Mm.
The biggest mistake that you see is you just send out 1,000 connection requests in a day,
Right.
and then you get 100 people connecting, and then you get slammed with a sales message without it's the I know it because I get competitors to us
Mm.
obviously doing this, so I know there's a lot of it going on,
Mm.
because if they'd done proper profiling, they would realize I was the wrong person to sell to.
Mm.
And then a chaser, and have you seen it as a chaser, and they're not giving
Right.
anything new, they're not adding any value, they're just chasing, and
Right.
it's a bit of a shame really, because it means that people get turned off from the platform. But
Right.
because some people are doing it badly, it means that when you do it well, you do stand out. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the most frequent messages I get are either for lead generation or they're for website or SEO type work,
yeah,
some type of development work. And yeah, it's amazing the volume of those messages that are coming through. And I kind of and maybe help me here. I almost analogize it like going to a country where you don't speak the language and being in a restaurant and ordering a meal, and you're sort of communicating to the waiter or waitress, and of course if they don't speak English, being an ignorant American, my one language, and my only sort of, and I immediately show my ignorance because the only way I can get them to understand me is to speak louder, yeah, that seems to be the way a lot of marketing goes today. Is if somebody doesn't understand you or they don't react, then you speak louder and you hit them more often, and it seems
yeah,
like
and it's
yeah.
all about personalization, and
Mm.
actually you can still do things at volume.
Mm.
You can still use tools,
Mm.
as long as you do it in a really nice way and you've taken the time, right? So
Right.
what's a lot of things that we're experimenting with is finding a variable that is really personal to them.
Mm. Mm.
So, like, we know what their last post was. We know
Mm.
how many likes they got on that post. We know how long ago that was. And
Mm.
so, if it was ages ago, then it's like, hey, I was looking at this post, noticed it was 3 months ago. Would you like any help with being
Mm.
more active?
Yeah.
Or I saw this post, you got loads of engagement. That's fantastic. I'm curious, how many views did you get? Because we know
Mm.
we might be able to help increase the views.
Mm.
You could, if you're selling into big enterprises, that's often in the news, you
Mm.
could be saying, hey, I was going to get in touch and I just read this article today, and I thought it might be worth us speaking about X,
Mm.
Y, Z. So it means you're using all the tools and technology, but you're still spending the time up front to find out
Mm.
what is that personalization that you should put in, and you can get more creative than just sticking somebody's name in. Um, and actually, it takes a bit more time, but you get a better conversion rate, more responses and more replies from it, then it's completely worth it.
Right.
And I think that what's going on with those kind of messages that you're getting is they're annoying people, but they don't care
Right.
because there's always more people to contact. And you just have to be really, really careful to not do that if you've got a limited audience base.
Right. So if I were going to summarize the best practices from what you've talked about in terms of communication, number one is be real specific in terms of who you're trying to connect
Hmm.
to.
Hmm.
And then two, it sounds like, is personalize the message
Yeah.
to something that's important for them,
And
or
test.
relevant to them, and
Yeah.
test. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are there additional things that we want to make sure that people know about in terms of best practices in terms of communication?
Yeah. Track everything.
Mm.
So
Mm.
if you've already asked them to follow your company page and you don't track that you've asked them,
Yeah.
and you ask them again, that's a bit annoying,
Right. Right.
and just to make sure that if you're doing anything which is at volume, like if you're sending 100 messages, just test
Mm.
everything,
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, we have gone from really poor results to fantastic results just from the perseverance of test this against this, this against this, and it's incremental changes that
Right.
we know makes a difference.
Yeah. No, that's sort of test, measure, iterate, test, measure, iterate. Yeah. Keep it. And yeah, no, just that makes so much sense. And I would imagine, thinking about the types of companies that can really benefit by leveraging LinkedIn. As you said off the top, really looking at where your sale is strategic, where it's conceptual, where it's relationship oriented, and where it's a sort of a multi-stepped and maybe multi-influenced
Yes.
process
Yeah.
is probably the idea. It sounds like the ideal scenario for
Yeah.
leveraging LinkedIn, and also, as you said off the top, was the idea of market entry. You can really have a strategy that helps you sort of warm the market, and it maybe even give you some early wins,
Yeah.
so that you're sort of entering a lot further advanced than you would be otherwise.
Yeah, and if you've got a sort of limited number of companies you've gone out to, you don't have to do mass marketing, mass advertising to the whole of the industry. Because if you're engaging with multiple stakeholders in a smaller number of companies, you're kind of becoming famous within those companies. Add in a little bit of LinkedIn advertising or some Facebook advertising onto that, and you just, if it's super targeted to the same companies, you're just you seem a lot bigger than you are. So I would just say it's absolutely ideal for super targeted, just really penetrate into those companies that can basically bring you into the country. It's, you end up closing that dream client that actually, will make it a success. Yeah.
Well, I know we need to finish up, and it seems like there are so many more opportunities. I think, other things that maybe would be great in a future conversation, talking about using LinkedIn for competitive intelligence or developing strategic partners. It seems like there are many more ways that this tool and platform can be leveraged. And would you come back at some point and maybe help us talk through those issues?
I'd be delighted. Thank you for asking, Bill.
Absolutely. So my sense is there'll be people interested in connecting with you and asking more questions, and maybe even learning more about Pitch One-to-One. What's the best way for folks to get a hold of you?
Send me a connection message.
Yeah, there you go. Connect with you on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Say I saw you on Bill's podcast. I heard you on Bill's podcast, and
exactly.
Let's connect, and then we can take it from there.
That sounds brilliant. Well, Laura, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you for taking time. This is just for those that are listening. We're recording this on Valentine's Day. I'm keeping Laura from her date this late afternoon. So certainly appreciate it. Thank your husband for us for allowing you to spend time with us today.
Will do, Bill. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Really appreciate your time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on today's podcast. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions or we can be of any service. Like us if you'd like to stay in the know on current episodes.